Good afternoon, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks. One-on-one with Keith Engle. We're back, as I promised. 3 o'clock today. Normally, remember, this show will air at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Fridays. And we've got some great guests coming up. My guest, bring in just a second, Marty Cordova, former Major League Baseball player with the Twins, with the Indians, with the Orioles, some time with the Blue Jays, Rookie of the Year in 95. We'll have some fun with Marty. And we've got Tim Worley coming up, former Georgia Bulldog and Pittsburgh Steeler star running back. We've got Brian Holloway, one of my favorites from the Patriots in the 80s, offensive lineman, and a very good one. And we've got a lot of other people coming your way. Buddy Biancalana as well on the 3rd of May. So lots of great stuff coming up. Want to welcome everybody watching us today live on TGI Sports Talks Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter feeds. Also, we're live on the Northeast Streaming Sports Roku channel today. Get that channel downloaded, guys. All you got to do is have the Roku app and download that Northeast Streaming app. Also, we're on Let's Talk Sports YouTube feed today as well. And just a quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media, as I like to do. Ralph is doing some great stuff there in Pittsburgh, specifically the Sports Corner with Smoke and Jim Frazier every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. on WBVP radio. So check that out. As I said, we're going back to our one-on-one interviews. This will be our first one of the new series, if you will. And I thank Chris F. Gray for helping me get this started and getting my guest Marty Cordova today. And we'll be on, remember, this is our usual slot for the MLB update. If you're joining us for that, unfortunately, we're going to do our interview and we'll get into that later on. And this show will air at 9 o'clock on Fridays as a rule. With that, let me bring in my guest. He's a former Major League Baseball player, as I said, Rookie of the Year in 95 with the Twins. Had a really, I think, a good Major League Baseball career. I know injuries played a part, unfortunately, in that career. And we'll talk to Marty all about that and more starting now. Hello, Marty Cordova. How are you?
I'm good, Keith. How are you?
I am excellent. So happy to have you with me today. Thanks for popping in. And thanks for Chris for kind of making the contact between the two of us. Not sure how you hooked up with Chris, but he's an interesting cat out of Toronto. I started following my show a couple of months ago, and I really enjoy his input for sure. Marty, you grew up in Vegas. What was it like growing up? I know, obviously, you were a very good baseball player, got scouted. I know you got drafted out of high school by the Padres, but didn't sign. When did you think or know that you had the talent to play at a higher level? And were there other sports that maybe you also were interested in or maybe recruited for by colleges or professional teams?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll make it brief because it's a very long answer. But I was always very athletic, and my dad was awesome. He got me into sports. He was the dad that was always there, very supportive of me being involved in sports. And I knew I was pretty good at baseball, but I was very good at football as well. I ended up going to Bishop Gorman, which is a powerhouse now in the nation, number one in baseball and basketball. And then when I was in high school, our baseball team wasn't very good. We didn't make the playoffs, but our football team was excellent. So I played football, and I was considering maybe going to college for football. Had a couple offers to like Washington, Oregon State, a couple of places like that. And I decided that, there's a lot of chance for injury there. And if I was going to have some sort of a career, I'd probably be a little safer in baseball. But to be honest, I really wasn't that excited about being an athlete. I thought it was more possible that I would go to school, get my medical degree, and become a doctor. I wanted to be involved in sports, but sports medicine, doing like arthroscopic surgeries, things like that for athletes, that seemed much more attainable than being a Major League Baseball player.
When did that turn around?
Yeah, that being said, so I went to UNLV for a year. I had scholarship there, and I went on a USA baseball team, and we traveled from LA to San Diego. We played this Japanese teams, and I was playing second base because they had another shortstop too, and I was a shortstop at the time. And I made a really bad throwing error, and I hit the first base coach. And ever since then, I had Steve Sax syndrome. I couldn't throw the ball, and it was really bad. And it was mental. It was terrible. It was like torture. So then I went to UNLV, and I couldn't even warm up on the sides when you warm up on the foul lines and throw the ball. People are like 10 feet apart, but I kept thinking I'd hit somebody. So I couldn't even play catch unless I was away from other people. taking infield, outfield. They moved me to third base. I couldn't throw the ball to second base. I'd either throw it over his head or bounce it 50 times. It was embarrassing. So I finally just said, I don't want to play baseball anymore. So I quit the team and I just said, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to become a doctor. And that's what I really wanted to do. That being said, Coach Mike Main from Orange Coast College, his son is Brent Main, who had a really nice major league career. He reached out and said, look, I know you're not playing at UNLV. He didn't really know why. He just thought I wasn't happy. And he said, why don't you come to OCC? You can play at a junior college. You don't have to sit out. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to. And he's like, just come down. So I went down there and he was a super nice guy. And he's like, look, I told him the story. And he's like, I don't care how many errors you make. Just come. You can live with me to get in-state residency. So I did. I moved in with him. And then I played in the fall baseball. And the same thing happened. I just kept throwing the ball away. And it wasn't fun anymore. And all my friends went to USD. And so I just started going down to USD, and then I ended up quitting the team at Orange Coast. And I'm like, I don't want to play. I had real long hair, and I was more interested in other things than playing baseball, and I wanted to get an education. So he was like, whatever. I moved out into an apartment, and then he couldn't find a shortstop. So then right before the season started, he's like, look, I'm willing to have you back on the team. I don't care if you throw the ball away 100 times a game. Just come give it a shot. So I said, okay. Reluctantly, I didn't really even want to do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I could always hit. I was a very good hitter, but I just threw the ball away. I could feel any ball hit to me at shortstop. I just couldn't throw it straight. So long story short, I ended up maybe hitting 500 that season, and I hit a lot of home runs, but I probably set a record for the most errors in history of a junior college season. And I had real long hair, and he's like, after the third game, we had lost our first 3 games, and he's like, cut your hair, you're off the team. So I just took scissors, and I had really long hair. And I cut it, and I'm like, okay, I'll take it more serious. And then, even then, I was drafted by the Twins at the 10th round, and Larry Corrigan was a scout, and Vern Falwell, I'm going to mess his name up, Falwell, and they were trying to get me to play minor league baseball. And I had a chance to go to Cape Cod League, and I said, I don't want to play minor league baseball. I'm not going to make it to the major leagues, but I do want to be a doctor, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to get a scholarship to USC. And I'm going to graduate from USC, and I'm going to become a doctor. That's what I really want to do. He had me on the phone. My flight was at 6 a.m, all the way till 2 a.m. And I'm like, look, I got to go. I don't want to do this. And he's like, what's stopping? And I said, I want to go to college. And he said, what if we gave you $40,000 a year for a scholarship for baseball? Then if you go and you don't like it and it doesn't work out, you can go back to college and it'll be free. And I was like, damn, he took away my excuse to not play ball with the Twins. Sorry, my air conditioner was loud. And I said, okay. And so that's really how I signed with the Twins. Was like, oh, all right, geez, can I go to bed now? That's really how it was. And then I went to Elizabethton, Tennessee to play minor league baseball, rookie ball, and I played third base. And again, I made a million errors at third base, but I hit really well. So they were still going to keep me around. I got a little more. I won't monopolize this, but so then the following season, I go to spring training, and I'm on the low A ball team, and all the brasses are on watching us play the high A team, and I'm playing third base. I got a ground ball hit to me, and I literally threw it over the clubhouse. They were like, oh, my God, this guy's terrible throwing the ball. So the next day, I had an outfielder's glove in my locker, and they're like, you're no longer an infielder. You're now an outfielder. And I was like, okay, that's a lot better. But even then, hitting the cutoff man was challenging. If I thought about it, I had to just kind of throw it as hard as I could because I had no touch, because I just had the yips so bad.
Did those challenges with the yips affect you at the plate at all as well? Did you carry it to the plate or no?
Not at all. I could always hit really well, and I had no fear at the plate. I knew I could hit, and I was confident at hitting. I just had zero confidence throwing the ball. I could catch the ball. I could run fast. I could steal bases. I could do all the things you needed to do. But once I got the ball in my hand, it was like, watch out. You don't have no idea where it's going to go. And I would, if I didn't think about it, I would hit the cutoff man every time, and I had a strong arm and everything. It's just, if I thought about it, I might literally throw a 36 hopper into the cutoff man who was 50 yards away. It was really embarrassing. But long story short, I got over that. I ended up just hitting my way through the minor leagues. I had a lot of trials and errors and made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of things wrong. Had 2 terrible seasons in low A ball before I took it serious. I just really didn't want to play baseball. I wanted to be a doctor. I was like, this is just something I'm doing. I'm still young. I was drafted at 19. I'm like, I want to go to school. I don't want to do this. And then finally, one of the coaches of the A-ball team, he said, look, this is your last chance. You're not going to get another chance. You've had 3 seasons now just of your talent and your ability to hit getting you by. If you don't take it seriously, you're going to get released, and you might regret it. So I thought about it, and I was like, his name was Steve Little. And I said, you know what, maybe I'm going to come back and be a different person. And I changed everything. That off season, I went home, I started boxing, I started doing everything to train. I worked out very hard. I hit every day, and I got rededicated. And then I just stepped in line then and went to high A, had a great season. Double A had a good season. Triple A had a great season, and then went to the major leagues.
Yeah, that ascension took a little bit of time. Actually, what was it like going from growing up in Las Vegas to being in places like Elizabethton and Kenosha? Was it a little bit of a culture shock for you, or?
It really was. But again, I'm like an open-minded person, and I don't care. Everybody's their own person, and I really didn't care. But it was culture shock. There was people, one guy in Tennessee would show up with like a diaper on, and he'd sit in the tree and he'd yell, and there's just all sorts of characters, and it was all good. I really enjoyed it. We played in Elizabethton, Tennessee. We had 4 guys. We had a car that didn't have a windshield. We wore sunglasses when we drove, so there were bugs and the wind wouldn't bother us. We had 4 dudes in an apartment. It was cool, and that's the one thing I really missed and enjoyed about baseball, was that camaraderie of 25 guys like brothers pulling together for the same common goal.
Did you ever have, obviously, once you committed yourself, things started to go better and you have a really good major league career and rookie of the year and whatnot. Did you ever regret not going back to school and becoming a doctor?
No, I didn't. And I learned as I got older to not have regret, and that you got to choose what you want to do and go with it and not look back and not second guess. So once I started to have success, I realized that maybe this was meant for me. And it became just something that felt natural to do. And I really enjoyed it. And I started to love playing baseball again, because I didn't love it for many, many years. It was just like a job. And I did it, but I was like, yeah, I could take it or leave it. I didn't have that passion that a lot of other guys had, but I had a work ethic. I really was taught that from my parents when I was young, of a really hard work ethic. So I was the guy that was the first there and the last to leave. And everything I did was involved with becoming the best player I could be, so that I would never have regret to go, man, I wish I would have stayed a little longer. I wish I would have worked a little harder. I may not have been the most talented guy for sure, but I definitely outworked everybody that I was around. I know that.
No, hard work will overcome talent a lot of times. So, or a lack of talent. Not that you had a lack of talent, but I've seen that a lot of times in all walks of life, not just sports, by the way. And guys, just to remind you, my guest today is Marty Cordova. I see some of your guys' comments. I will get to them. If I see something that's relevant in that point of the conversation, I might put it up. If not, we'll get to some of those afterwards, just so I don't want you to pop away. Scott Kobe, I see yours there, and that's not the perfect time to put that one up. So anyway, you get to the major leagues with the Twins, and unfortunately, the Twins are kind of past that point where they'd won a couple World Series in the few years previous you getting there. Tom Kelly had won. And I do want to ask you about Tom Kelly. In my mind, Tom Kelly's a bit underrated as a manager. I can't think of too many guys, and I know he's got a losing record overall, but he won 2 World Series, and I don't know too many managers that won 2 World Series and didn't get to the Hall of Fame. What was it like when you got to the major leagues, and what was kind of relationship did you have with Tom Kelly, who was at that point a 2-time world champion?
Yeah, I'll get to TK in a sec. One thing, though, that I'd like to say to anybody that ever listens to this is, you got to things happen for a reason. And if you're open to them, and now looking back on my life, every time I thought I knew what I was doing, it was wrong. And every time I was open to just what would be, things happen for the right way. And many people along the way are like, man, you're doing something right. You're living this blessed life because things are happening to you that shouldn't happen. That being said, we went on strike in 94. Yeah. And the season World Series was ended, and I had a really good season in AAA, and I didn't get called up because it was canceled. And then the season the next year was in jeopardy because of the strike. That being said, my good fortune, Shane Mack, who was the starting left fielder, who was a great player, he was a free agent, and he went to Japan and signed a 4-year, $16 million deal, which opened up that left field position for me. And then once we came out strike, I was able to have to win that job. That being said, that kind of segues into TK. He was it was a love-hate relationship with him, and mostly I hated him. And I say that now lovingly, but he just would really try to push my buttons. That spring training, my rookie year, I had 136 at-bats in spring training. I played every inning from day one all the way to the end of spring training, not one inning off. I never got taken out, no matter what the score was or what the situation was. I traveled everywhere on the road, which is not what starters do. But he's like, you're going to earn this position. I ended up hitting like 330 in spring training with 6 homers and a bunch of RBIs. And he's like, he earned the position. So I did appreciate that, but he really ruled with an iron fist. And I have a million TK stories about these examples. But I think at the end of the day, he had a big heart. He just was a rough exterior, and that was the era back then. Is that you kind of, it was tough. There was no, good job. It was not like that. It was embarrassment, and it was public shame, and it was things like that to try to get the best out of you. And I have a million stories about that. But I really respected him as a coach. The way he managed me, I didn't like it because I was more of a person that I like a little encouragement. I like toughness too, and I'm not soft in any way. But I would see him break down other people, and they couldn't handle it. And I think that was his way of weeding out the weak. But I didn't really love that style. I thought there was a softer way to do it, because this was hardcore. I mean, there's a middle ground. Not too soft is not good either. But go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. You're good.
No, yeah. So then getting to play with him, I was a rookie, and me and Eddie Cordova were the only rookies on the team. I was super fortunate to be close friends with Kirby Puckett. I hit fourth, he hit third, so we became like very close friends. He made me carry his bag everywhere. He had this huge Louis Vuitton bag. I thought he put quarters in it because it weighed like 200 pounds, and he'd be like, "Wherever I go, I better turn around and see you with my bag everywhere I go." And he goes, another thing too, rookies are to be seen and not heard. I don't even want to hear you. I just want to see you, and I want to see you play well. And I'm like, yes, sir. And then we became really, really close friends. But that's just kind of the way back then. It's different than it is now. Like, you had to earn the respect of the veteran players, and you had your role. A veteran set here, rookie set there. There was a pecking order, and it was like you earned your way up. And you had to earn it. You didn't just come in and be granted some status because you were a number one pick or because you were supposed to be something. You had to show you deserved it.
Kirby's an interesting, great player, obviously Hall of Famer. His career cut short by the eye problems. You talk about yourself and training, getting in shape and being focused. And Kirby looked like a short, squatty little guy, but he played as well as anybody in the majors. I mean, how did Kirby work out compared to like yourself as far as getting prepared for baseball? Did you have different approaches? And Kirby was obviously a great player no matter what the body shape is. But
you may not believe this, but I know the truth. He was so much stronger and in better shape than he looked. He just had a build. That was his build. He was big in the middle section, but he was hard. He was like a rock. He was like a bowling ball. There was not a lot of fat on him. Later in his life, he got a little bit chunkier because he stopped working out as much. But he was a really hard worker. He took extra batting practice like crazy. He really loved, he was so passionate for the game. He loved it. And he was just a good people person. But a lot of people thought, he was out of shape. His calves were ridiculously big. He could jump like crazy. He could run. He was so much more of an athlete than he looked like. And if you saw him like with his shirt off and in shorts, you'd say, wow, he's in a lot better shape than I thought. But in a baggier uniform, he just looked a little bit chunkier. But if you look back to some of his younger days when he was a center fielder and really fast, he was very trim. He just got thicker, like man size, and he wasn't fat. He really wasn't. It's just a lot of people give that image to baseball players because guys are thicker and stronger, but they look like they may be chunky. And I'm not saying all guys were in perfect shape like most guys are today, but yeah, he wasn't out of shape.
He and Knobloch were kind of the only guys left, I think, if I remember correctly, from those championship days. Maybe a couple pitchers I'm not thinking of. What was holding that team back? Was it all money? I know that as we got closer to 2000s and probably the end of your time in Minnesota, contraction was brought up a lot with the Twins talked about. Was money the problem specifically at that time in Minnesota?
Well, to be honest, we didn't have that young of a team. We had like Scott Erickson from the World Series team. Rick Aguilera was a stud. Kevin Company. We still had Gene Larkin, who got the game-winning hit in the World Series. Yeah, we still had a lot of guys. I even think Dan Gladden was. I don't know if he was still there. I can't remember if he had one.
I think Gladden was gone by then.
He might have been gone, but the team wasn't like a young team. It's just for some reason we couldn't put it together as a team, and there were other teams in our division that were just better. And then like the Red Sox were awesome, the Yankees were great, and back then they didn't have as many wild card spots, and it was just. It's really hard to explain because we had not a bad team, but it was like the good teams. It's like in every sport, there's just that little separation between the teams that win those games when it's on the line and teams that don't. And it really is just those one-run games that swing a season, because 10 wins one way or another is a big difference. And so we just couldn't win those close games. We'd run into tough pitching. We didn't hit when our pitchers would give up 2 runs, we'd score 1. We'd score 6, they give up 7. It was a lot of that, and it just didn't work. And I think we lost 100 games, but we were not a 100-loss team by any means.
Yeah, Chris talks about Scott Erickson, what a giant of a man on the pitcher's mound. I remember he went to the Orioles, I think, later in his career when he got traded away. And again, a guy who a lot of guys toiled in little anonymity then, because, the world was different. The internet wasn't there, so you didn't know about players playing in Minnesota necessarily the way you might today. Did you ever feel lost in that part of the country playing ball?
A couple things. First of all, I love Minnesota and I love the people, and I really like playing there. And to be honest, I felt very fortunate because I could have been in the Yankee organization, and then you're behind Bernie Williams or Paul O'Neill or someone like that, and you could be the most talented guy, and you could live in AAA for your 6 years of your minor league till you're a free agent, and then they can hold you, and then you can be 12 years stuck in an organization, and it's hard. So I was fortunate that I got the opportunity. I still had one option left on my contract. I could have been sent down another time, but I never did. So I looked at it as a blessing that I got an opportunity to play on a team that gave me that chance to play, because I might not have started on another team at that point in my career. So yeah, you can look at it in many different ways. Is there the celebrity that comes with it, and is it fun being on a losing team? Absolutely not. But is it good to be in the major leagues and get that experience? Absolutely. So I feel really blessed that I was playing for the Twins.
Well, being a longtime Yankee fan, I can tell you, if you were stuck in their organization with talent, you would have got traded for a pitcher who'd win about 4 games, and you would have gone out somewhere to be a star anyway. So you'd have been fine with the Yankees. So your first couple of years, you really are turning. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't feel sorry for a team that's won 27 World Series and was at the playoffs every year, so I'm not going to feel too sorry for you. And
no, I wasn't looking for any sympathy. I promise.
I'm kidding. Saying you guys the Yankees have done a great job over the years, and they've been the powerhouse forever. It's unfortunate that maybe another team wins every now and then, right?
It is for us, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, when the Yankees aren't in there, I can remember, the Yankees weren't terribly good, actually, when the Twins were winning their World Series. And I can remember rooting for them because I always like to root for underdogs. And I know there were big underdogs both times against the Cardinals. I think the first time, and the Braves the second time. So I was actually rooting for them. So, yeah. Us Yankee fans can be a bit spoiled.
Isn't it Mattingly never made the playoffs, or maybe 1 year? I mean, they had a stretch where they had some great players, but it's again, like, why did that team not succeed? It wasn't like they didn't have some good players. It's just that little bit that can change everything.
No, that's another whole show we could get into for sure about why the Yankees didn't win there. But you certainly started off like gangbusters. I mean, you look like you were going to be a future superstar. Your first 2 years were really good, and then do we start to have some injury problems after that hindered your performance?
What I think was my downfall a little bit was I really liked to box, and I grew up with Dana White, who's now the UFC president and owner, and back then he was a boxing trainer. He had trained Floyd Mayweather, and so when I would come home, I would box with him, and we would train like 3 hours a day, 3-minute rounds, 30-second rest, and I was just a crazy workout person, just trying to be so strong. And I got plantar fasciitis in my right foot, and it started to hobble me, and then I just kept trying to work through it. And then that spring training, when I went in 97, I could hardly walk when I got to spring training, and my whole foot was black and blue from my heel to toe. And I refused to try to sit down and let it heal, which was a big mistake. I was getting cortisone shot after cortisone shot. We opened that season in Detroit, and it was like 22 degrees with the wind chill factor, and I could hardly even walk, and it just was miserable. It took away one of my talents, was to have speed, and I didn't have that much speed anymore. So for probably 3 years there, it took till my arch completely tore, and now I don't have an arch in my right foot anymore. But I just had to deal with that pain, and it made baseball not fun anymore, because just even standing there shagging for a couple hours, I just wanted to die. I wanted to get off my feet. I used night splints, everything I could, and it just really was a terrible time to be an athlete for me. And I didn't cry about it, and I didn't tell a lot of people, because it's hard. You want to play through injuries, and there's a difference between being injured and being hurt. And I didn't want to lose my job, so I really would go out there, and I had a couple of seasons where I didn't steal any bases. My defense was still not bad, because I could still, you don't have to run that far a lot of times, and I was willing to do that, to those bursts of speed. But it just took its toll. And then I became a DH. And that's one thing I talked to Tom Kelly about. I'm like, look, you're really ending my career. In 1998, he full-time DH'd me because Chad Allen was a rookie and he needed to play. It's hard for rookies to DH. And I had a good season. I hit 285 and I did well at the plate, but I wasn't playing. And I'm like, look, you're limiting me. I can't be a DH at 29 years old. It's just limiting where I can go after that. And we had many discussions about it, but I understood and just did the best I could. But to answer your question, yeah, that plantar fasciitis was the main thing that kind of derailed my career for those 3 years.
Was there any thought? I mean, did it get bad enough where you thought about walking away?
No, I didn't think about walking away. I didn't. I really wanted to play. I just had to deal with pain all the time. It's not fun to be in. I mean, the pain of a plantar fasciitis when it's tore that bad, and I was getting so many cortisone shots. I had these like popcorn kernels in my arches, and I was massaging it and doing therapy every day on it, but it just was always black and blue. It looked terrible, and I said, I got to just keep going. There's no other way. You can't just give up. So I don't have that attitude. I don't give up on anything. And I'm like, I'm going to find a way to fight through this and keep going. And should I probably just went on the DL and sat out for 3 months and let it heal completely, or had surgery and totally had it tore completely? Maybe, maybe that would have been the better. I don't know. And I can't go back in time and change my mind. But Mark McGwire had that same injury, and I was talking to him a lot. I was talking to doctors and anybody I could to try to get the best advice. I slept in a night splint, but then I'd wake up in the morning and I'd hear it go as it tore again. It was just not fun time in my life.
I think that's what ended his career, wasn't it? With the plantar fasciitis, or was it in his? I think that was. Well, maybe it was in his knee though.
He had some back problems too.
Yeah.
He's a big guy, and when you're carrying that kind of weight, and he wasn't a slow guy either. He was pretty fast when he was young too. So a lot of times when you get those kind of injuries, especially on your foot or your knee or where it's your base, it affects your hitting, it affects your running, everything. So
Did you end up with back problems because of the foot problems?
Yeah, I right now, that whole bunch of, I just had stem cells injected into my back in Mexico at CPI. Yeah. I had because my right foot was like 1 inch shorter than my left after my arch went out. So my back was off, and I wore orthotics. I tried everything. And again, it's just hard to stay so dedicated to these things when you're walking around. I had to switch them to dress shoes, to this, to that. And I didn't want to do it all the time. And I was anyway, I don't want to dwell on any negativity. It's just what it was. And I don't make one excuse. The injuries had nothing to do with my career. It's just a part of it, but I don't blame that on anything. I came back from it, had good seasons after that. So there's no excuse. I don't blame anything but myself for any bad seasons I had.
Fair enough. Not a lot of guys would say that. That's interesting. So Tom moves you to DH. You're not terribly happy there. Did that help facilitate you leaving via free agency after the 99 season?
The game was different back then, and the way people talked to you was different too. General manager at the time, I was at the end of my contract, and I had an option for like 3.5 million or maybe a little more. And back then that was like fourth of the team salary payroll. So they really had no choice but to either pick up that option or let me be a free agent. So there wasn't really a lot of choice. And the general manager was like, Terry Ryan is his name, was like, you're not going to have a career anymore. He said that. He's like, you're done. You're getting older. Your foot is hurt. You're not going to have a career anymore. And it really infuriated me. I'm like, we'll see. And he may or may not remember saying that, but he did. And it was like, damn, that's like his truth, and he was an honest guy. And he's like, look, I don't see you ever having another good season the rest of your career. He goes, you'll be lucky if you have a career anymore. And that's why we're not signing you, picking you up. And I'm like, okay. And it made me more determined and wanting to do better after that. But in some aspects, I understand. He was right. I wasn't a good fit for the team as a DH and making that kind of money. And they were going young, and they became very good. They got a lot of young, good players. And after that, they made the playoffs, and they got young and good and developed their young guys.
Interesting. So you signed with the Red Sox, who you don't necessarily play. I don't think you played any regular season games with. What was the story there before you moved on to Toronto? That's
another story that's just not a very good one. Is my agent was very good friends with Dan Duquette. And I had opportunities to play with the Reds on guaranteed contracts, and a couple other teams that offered me 1-year deals. And the Red Sox had said, we'll give you a 2-year deal. And it was for a decent amount of money. Like back at the time, it was like $3.2 million for 2 years, but it was a minor league invite. And Dan Duquette's like, I guarantee he's going to make the team. He's going to take Tom Gordon's spot when he goes on the 60-day DL. He's going to be out the whole year, blah, 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 blah. I'd always played good against the Red Sox. And I knew all those guys, Garcia Parra, really well. I was friends with all the Veritek, Trot Nixon, all those guys. I went to spring training. I really worked out so hard because I wanted to prove everybody wrong, like especially Terry Ryan. And I came in like very muscle bound, and I'd been taking batting practice, but I was just really working on getting strong. And that spring training, like Jimmy Williams was a manager, and I ended up hitting like 400 during that spring training. And I had and all the guys like, where are you gonna live in Boston? And I'm like, I don't know. I got this weird feeling. They signed Gary Gaetti to a $600,000 minor league deal. And Jimmy Williams would give me a first base mitt, and it almost set a sure panic in me. He's like, we want you to play first base. And I'm like, I haven't played infield since college, and I was terrible. And at first base, I can field the ball, but I was already getting like panic attacks. Like, this ain't gonna work. I'm taking ground balls at first, extra all day, and I'm like, I can field any ball. I just catching the ball on a pickoff and throwing it back to the pitcher was making me like anxious. So it didn't work out. He's like, anybody could see that's not going to work out. So then Tom Gordon went on the 60-day DL, and he called me. Jimmy Williams called me in the office and said, look, maybe it's your contract. I'm not sure, but we're not going to guarantee your contract. And he goes, I think you're a great player. I'm gonna play you every day here so that you can get picked up by somebody else. He goes, Gary Gaetti was a cheaper option, and he plays first base. And so that day we played in Bradenton, and the wind was blowing out like 60 miles an hour. And there was a pop up to like the pitcher's mound, and it blew all the way out in the left field. And Nomar and myself collided, and his knee hit me in the rib and cracked my rib.
Oh, geez.
Now I'm like, oh my God, I'm injured. I mean, I had to crawl off the field. I was not going to let them carry me off the field. And then I was like, what am I going to do? So my agent had found some other teams that were interested, and I ended up going to the Blue Jays and took batting practice because they just wanted me to come there and hit. And it was one of the most painful things I've ever done, is to have to try to play through a cracked rib. It was the soft part, not like a totally broken rib, or I would have been out. But it was, I had trouble breathing, sleeping. And so that season in 2000 with the Blue Jays was the first couple of months were just torture of trying to play through that kind of a pain. And it just takes time for a rib to heal. And when you're hitting every day, it just wasn't good. So anyway, again, I'm not making any excuses. It is what it is. And I didn't play well. I hit like 245 that season. So I'm not making any excuses.
Were you looking forward to playing in Fenway? This plays into Scott's question here a little bit. Did you hit well in Fenway in your career as a visitor and look forward to playing there with the Red Sox?
Yeah, I did. I really did. I looked forward to ESPN Sunday night games. I like to have the spotlight on. I like the pressure. I'm just one of those dudes. Put me in a pressure situation. I may fail, but I don't care. I just want to have that opportunity. I don't shy away from it. So I wanted to be on that stage of Boston. I played well there. It's funny. I wasn't really a pull hitter because Tom Kelly had beat it into my head. Go to right center, go to right center, go to right center. And I hit like 46 doubles my second year because I was just trying to drive the ball to right center and not pull the ball. And I didn't want to strike out as much. So my batting average was high, like 309 that year. A lot of doubles, but not a lot of power. I only hit 18 home runs. And so when I played in Boston, it's huge to right center and short to left, but I wasn't a pull hitter. But I always hit well there. I just didn't hit a lot of home runs there. So I was really looking forward to playing there. And then jump back one season, or that season, sorry, is in spring training that year. My agent was also very good friends with Brian Cashman. And he said, look, he can come to the Yankees. He'll be the 25th player. He'll be the 5th outfielder, and his career might end here because he might not play at all. And he might get sent down, or you never know what's going to happen. And so I decided to go to the Blue Jays instead. Well, that year they won the World Series, and in the first month, all of their outfielders were hurt. So I would have been playing. Who knows? I might not have played well, and I would have got released. I can't say that, but I would have been on a team that did win the World Series, and I would have had the opportunity to play.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. Toronto is basically a stopover. You didn't play a lot that year. The next year, you actually revive your career in Cleveland and get to the playoffs for the first time in your career. Talk a little bit about that period.
That was that was my favorite season, obviously, because we won. But I really liked the teammates, and there was a ton of veteran players there, and I got along great with all of them. But looking back, the only thing I would probably change in my career is when I went to Cleveland that year. I lived by myself in spring training. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day. I went to bed as soon as I could, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I ate perfectly. I worked out like crazy. And then I would go to the field, and they had this virtual reality pitching machine that was really cool at the time. And it would simulate like a pitcher, and then it would come out. So I would take extra batting practice and do crazy amounts of working out, hitting. That's all I did. Baseball, hit. Didn't do anything, made my own food, went home, didn't go out one time, didn't do anything stupid. And Charlie Manuel was awesome. He's such a good guy, and he really saved my career. He was an underdog at times, and he was like, "Look, I'm going to play you. You hit, I'm going to play you." He had that country accent. I don't give it. I'm going to play you. I want the best players out there. I don't care who you are. And so he gave me the opportunity. I hit like 450 in spring training, and literally every at bat I hit the ball hard. It was crazy how good I did that spring training. And looking back, I think it was a result of the work I put in. So then I got to know all the guys, made the team, and even then it was like I was on a 6-day contract because CC Sabathia was not going to be called up till his first start, and then Travis Fryman went on the deal, opened a spot for me, and I just kept hitting, and he kept playing me. And one thing though is Manny Ramirez, when he was in Cleveland, he had this vision training where he had a board that were lights and you touched them, and then he had a video game that trained your eyes. And I literally lived on these things. I was just doing them every day, relentlessly. And again, I put everything on hold on my career, and I really focused on training my vision. And that first 2 months of that season, I had 400, and even 400 for 2 months. And I really was so dedicated. And then, like anything, the law of averages, and maybe I got a little lazy and tired. I didn't quite do it as much, but I hit every day early with Jim Tomei and Charlie Manuel. We'd be out there, and Jim Tomei hit every day early. He was a crazy person. Even when he hit well, he worked hard. And so I loved that camaraderie, and I got to be good friends with Jimmy, and we would hit every day, work hard every day, and the team was great. It was a lot of fun.
Interesting. And what was it like getting your first taste of the playoffs that year in Cleveland?
It was awesome. It was really good. You know, I love those moments. The pressure was crazy. It's hard to explain the amount of pressure from the coaches, the tension. It's like everyone's on edge. The coaches are like really on edge. Everybody is. It's you're a spotlight. And the one thing that was kind of frustrating was we played in Seattle against Seattle, and when we played in the Kingdom, or the new field, the Safeco Field, they had the dome open, and I was like praying to God they would be overcast or that they close the dome, because the sun at the time, we had to play the afternoon games because the Yankees were the main game. So when we were playing, the sun was in my eyes. I had to hold a glove over my eyes and wear sunglasses every time. The hitters were in the shade, and I was just like, if they hit me the ball, it's like 50-50 if I'm going to see it. So I was under a crazy amount of stress to not, in the playoffs, make a play that you make a play in the outfield that's in the air, you cost your team minimum of runs, maybe the game. So there was a lot of pressure on me that way. I hit okay. I probably could hit better. I think I hit 250, a couple RBIs. We got beat. Jamie Moyer had a great 2 games. He threw 36 miles an hour, which threw everybody off. And they had Freddie Garcia. So yeah, it was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. I wish I had more of a playoff record. I wish more of my teams I was on better teams, and but it was what it was. But that was a really magical season for me.
It's interesting or ironic. You mentioned Don Mattingly early. The only season Don Mattingly ever went to the playoffs was the same year Marty Cordova went to the playoffs.
Yeah. So I got something.
You make it into the same conversation as Don Mattingly. So
subtitle.
Subtitle. So you rejuvenate your career. You're getting along with Charlie Manuel, who probably an overused phrase, a great players manager, right? Yeah. You move on though after that season to Baltimore. Why did your Cleveland tenure not last longer?
I think it was really, I was a free agent, and just to be honest, I was looking to, like everybody is, get the best contract I could get, and to move on where I knew I would have a guaranteed deal for a few years and I could play every day. And Baltimore offered me a 3-year contract, and I was, at the time, it was great money, and I was like, why wouldn't I? Probably could I have stayed at Cleveland on a much smaller contract? Yeah, they probably wouldn't have done a multi-year deal. It really wasn't even discussion, because they knew I was going to go probably get a multi-year deal somewhere else they couldn't match. So it was just, I really quickly moved into free agency and then signed with the Orioles. So yeah.
Another team that was kind of in a downward trend. You got there the year after Cal Ripken retired. I mean, one of the questions I always ask people when I do this, do you regret not getting a chance? And I know you don't have a lot of regrets. Do you regret not getting a chance to play with Cal Ripken in your career as you got there a year after he left?
Yeah, I did. And you know what? Now that you're talking about this, I'm seeing a common theme: me coming to teams and them not being good. So
some of them were bad when you got there, in all fairness to you.
I'm joking. No, yeah, that was really, I really wish I could have played with Cal. I got to play with a lot of great players in my career. Him being one of my idols, I really, because he's a hard worker, And that people always say like, oh, he just showed up to work every day. The dude was freaking talented and an unbelievable player. And I don't, it always bothers me when people say things like that, or even like Greg Maddux, he wasn't a power pitcher. The dude didn't throw 82 miles an hour. He threw 93, 94 when he wanted to. And if he wanted to throw fastballs, he could blow down a lot of dudes. So for them to say he was just a guy that showed up every day was almost like, I thought that was a little bit not true. You know, he was a very talented player. I mean, a guy 6'4" playing shortstop, he was very talented, very good player. But yeah, to answer your question, I wish I'd had the opportunity to play with him.
Those are your last 2 years in the majors. I mean, did you have nothing left, or what prompted you to finally just walk away? I mean, did people not want you? Did you feel you had something left?
What ended my career was I had Tommy John surgery in Baltimore, and then I was starting to get back issues, and then I was just getting beat up over just these injuries over my career. And then I'd signed with Tampa, and Tampa at that time was very bad. Lou Piniella was the manager, and he's a cool dude, and he was a veteran guy. And at the time, I was a veteran player, and so I'd signed a 1-year deal with them. But I went to spring training, and I'd worked out, but my back was so bad that I do crazy amounts of working out, and even doing like semi-hard working out, it was hard for me to get out of bed the next day. And so I went to spring training, and then I was like, look, I can't even really do this. I'm not going to be able to perform. And then I talked to Lou, and I'm like, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to play. And I think I don't know what he thought, like that I was making an excuse, or I'm not sure. He was like, look, you don't have to do what the other guys do. You can show up, and we'll take it easier on you. And I'm like, look, I'm not looking for an easy season. I'm just being honest. It's not fun to be in pain. And so I just decided to retire. It was no fanfare or nothing. I didn't have a great career where I'm going to retire. It was just, I let the game go. I had a lot of other things. I was doing business in Vegas. I had other opportunities in my life, and I immediately had back surgery, and then just moved on with my life. And I had no regrets. After the back surgery, could have came back and played, but I was like, yeah, maybe I could have played another year or two, but it just didn't feel like it was something that I wanted. I was ready to move on. And to be honest, I wasn't always I didn't want to be known as a baseball player. I thought there was more to me than that. And so I never told people I played baseball when I met them. Even to this day, Dana White likes to embarrass me and introduce me as a 95 Rookie of the Year. And I get really like embarrassed. I'm like, dude, I'm not a freaking baseball player. It was another lifetime ago. And I'm much more than that. I'm a person, and I have other things besides athletic abilities that I bring to the table. At least I feel I do. And so I was ready to come up.
Tell us about some of that. What's your life after baseball has been, and what do you got going on right now, real quick, before I'll segue back to baseball a little bit after you get done with that.
Sure. I'll try to make it brief, but there's a lot to that. When I was playing, I grew up with Lorenzo Fertitta, who was owners of the Station Casinos properties, and they bought the UFC. They built that up, and then they sold it. He's a very successful guy, and I'd always been close with him, and he was always giving me business advice and things. And I'd also had a good friend who was a broker and a real estate person, so I'd been buying passive investing into real estate in Vegas, industrial properties, investing, developing a way to have passive income when I retire. And so I was really heavy into business in that aspect, and learning and trying to understand how to grow businesses and what business life is like, because a lot of athletes don't know this, and then they put their money into other people's hands, and things go sideways when you don't watch them. You can't just give your money to somebody and think that everything's going to work out. I learned the hard way on a couple of business ventures that I did in a restaurant, a couple of sports stores, like vitamin types stores, like Max Muscles, they were called. And I was an investor, but I didn't watch what was going on, and it didn't work out well for me. So I kind of learned that. And when I retired, I started building custom homes in Vegas with a friend of mine who did that. I had my real estate going on as a passive investor. And then the crash of 2008 really hurt, so I needed to do something else. So I started a company with two other friends called Bent Pixels. We were a social media influencing company. We would manage YouTube channels, and I had a relationship with Perry Rogers, who is Shaquille O'Neal's agent now, and at the time he was also Kevin Hart's agent. So we started building mobile apps. That's what we did. So we built mobile apps for Shaq and for Kevin Hart. And then another good friend of one of my partners was friends with a guy named Key Lee, who was the head of agencies or sales for Google. And he's like, Google owns YouTube, and he's like, why don't you try to bring these guys over to YouTube? So we were part of a $100 million initiative with YouTube to bring Shaq over to YouTube. And so then we started to become an MCN, a multi-channel network in YouTube, and we got up to about 80,000 YouTubers that we represent, and built this business, and I really enjoyed it. I was friends with Joe Rogan, and we managed JoeRogan.net before he had powerful JRE. And then over about 13 years, grew that company to a large company. We represented all the esports teams. It's still a company now. And about 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to sell my interest in it. And I personally developed a tech company out of this, where I developed the software side of it, me and my partner, Tom Santoli. And that turned into Paladin Software. And then I ended up selling that company, and then also selling my interest in Bent Pixels, and decided to move on to something else in my life at that point. So
that's funny. The YouTube situation, I met you too late. I should have met you, like 4 years ago.
Yeah. I know a lot about YouTube and monetization and rights management and things like that. So I'm not shy about this, and my life is my life, and I'm not embarrassed of anything. I had some issues of drinking and pain medications from back surgeries and things. And so I decided about 3.5 years ago to just change my life completely. And I stopped drinking, stopped taking pain medication, and really focused the last few years on changing my life and being a better person. And so over those 3 years, I just kind of knew I wanted to do something in the wellness space, either open a rehab center and try to be better, help people get better that are suffering. And this didn't really fit. And I think I needed to grow more personally. And then about a year ago, I started talking with a girl named Jackie Stryker here in Las Vegas, who I've known for a long, long time. And she wanted to do some sort of wellness center. And then come to today now, we just signed a lease, and we're going to be opening a wellness center in Las Vegas called Reshape Body Bar. And one of my partners is Max Crosby with the Raiders, and another friend of mine, Brent Bone, who owns about 60 McDonald's. So he understands the franchise model, is another partner. And we're going to have like 5 cold plunges, infrared sauna. We're going to have a red light therapy bed, float tanks, hyperbaric chambers. And then Jackie is a professional at lymphatic flush. It flushes out your lymphatic system, which helps prevent disease and healing after surgeries and things. And it's a medical. A lot of doctors prescribe that for people that have had surgeries or injuries, and even Max Crosby, after his surgeries, was doing lymphatic flush. So it's exciting. I'm happy to do it. It's going to help people. It's going to be my chance to do what I wanted to do, is help other people and give back. So I'm pretty excited. I'm actually really passionate about this now. It's given me something now to go back into that I really want to be a part of. I'm going to be there. I'm going to work there every day. I'm going to be dedicated to helping this grow. And I really look at it as an opportunity for other athletes and other people that have some celebrity or fame in their little town. Maybe that's guys from Tucson, say Devontae Adams, and he wants to open up one of these. And there's other competition, but who's going to go to Wellness Center, Devontae's or Joe Blow's? So it's like, I think it's a good way for athletes to put their money to work in a pretty productive way to help the community. And I think that they're experts in it. Everybody knows this wellness space as an athlete. And I think a lot of people now are starting to understand cold exposure and infrared saunas and what that does mentally and physically.
That's impressive. I always like when I hear people that have had challenges of their own, recognize them, and then are able to kind of give back and help other people. And it's great to hear that that's what you're doing. So that's a great story, Marty. I hope that goes tremendously successfully for you.
Thank you.
Circle back, and I'm going to ask you, and I'll go to some of the questions from there was a couple I already put up. Let's see if there's anything I skipped over. We talked about Fenway Park. We talked about Chris. Chris talks about team chemistry wins games, but it doesn't come easy. This is when we were talking about the Yankees. One of the reasons those Twins teams, I think, were so good under Tom Kelly in 87 and 90. It was 91, 91 or 92. I always get that wrong.
You're right.
80, 91. It had a great chemistry. I mean, Kirby Puckett's a great player, but it wasn't a team loaded with superstars like the Yankees had for years during that. And one of the reasons I said they weren't winning is they didn't build that type of team chemistry. You just go out and sign, guys for the biggest contracts you can find. And there's something to be said for team chemistry. And I think you can probably speak to that a little bit as well.
Sure. I would say it's vital. It's like in business, your culture is everything, and you got to have people rowing in the right direction. You can't have people rowing against each other and selfish players and people that are out for themselves in business, in any aspect of life for that matter. So yeah, I played on some good teams from all the way from youth all the way up, and the teams that gelled together, that guys, and that was what really I think Tom Kelly liked to try to do. That is, you pick the other guy up. This guy falls down, you pick him up. We pick each other up. We're selfless players. We don't play for our stats. We play for the team. It's so important that a lot of times you get, and again, I'm not speaking, this is just facts. You get a group of 25 all-stars together. They kind of do their thing. interested in being the greatest, and then they kind of go their own way. They don't gel as a team. They don't interact as a team. They're on their own. They're busy with their fame and celebrity, and they're not really focused on the team as much as they need to be. And you see it all the time in really good teams that come together with maybe some superstars, and you're like, why don't they win? And it's just, I think there's a lot to being selfless, and there's a lot to being a teammate and a good person and a good teammate, and you build that camaraderie. And all teams have some, don't get me wrong, but there can be groups, factions in a clubhouse where these are the veterans, these are not, these are these guys, these are that, and it can pull the team apart. And then it seems when times get tough, the good teams that have that good chemistry, they pull together and overcome, when other teams then kind of go, they go to themselves and they look for others for comfort instead of looking for the teammates.
Great point. Chris also asked, outside of baseball, what was your time like in Toronto? How did you like life in Toronto?
I love Toronto. Toronto is a beautiful city. It's like a clean New York, as a lot of people refer to it. People are very nice. I like Canadian people a lot. Not just saying that, like Minnesota people too. Those people are very, very kind, very nice people. Toronto, though, the only thing I didn't really love about it is the smoking was kind of, at that time, it was 2000. It was rampant inside restaurants and bars. You could smoke, so it was like a lot of people smoked. That was the only negative, and I shouldn't probably mention it, but there's nothing else. I loved everything about Toronto when I played there, as far as the city and the people.
Danny Fuller's got a couple questions. Who was your favorite team growing up out there in Vegas? They'll have a team now. 5 years from now, if you want to call the A's a team. Sorry, I probably shouldn't disparage them that way. But who was your favorite team growing up?
We didn't have a team, and Vegas was a gaming town, and there was no sports here to speak of except college. So my big brother was a baseball player too, and he's like 6 years older than me. So I kind of, whatever he liked as far as music or sports go, I liked, and he liked the Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds. And so I had a glove with Davey Concepcion. I was a shortstop. His autographed glove, a Rawlings glove. So that was kind of the team that I followed. But even then, Vegas didn't show sports teams. There wasn't that. Like in football, my friend worked for A.G. Spanos, and he owned the Chargers. So we were fans of the Chargers just because they were close, and you had to pull for somebody. So we chose them. So I was a native of Vegas. I didn't come from somewhere else with a team. So I just kind of, whatever was close, I wanted to be loyal to my friends' teams and things like that. So yeah, and my brother, of course, what he liked, I liked at that time.
And what was your favorite stadium to play in?
My favorite stadium to play in was the one I got to play in for 3 years, which was Camden Yards. Just a beautiful stadium. The warehouse was amazing. Then you get the view of center field to the skyline of downtown. It was a great park. I loved playing there. It's just, everything about it was a beautiful stadium. Jacobs Field I really enjoyed as well. And then, of course, the greats of Yankee Stadium and Fenway and Wrigley. They're all great, but I would say probably Camden Yards was the most beautiful stadium, and I like to play there.
I think Camden Yards set a trend for these when the new stadiums started coming around. They were kind of the model for those rebuilds. So, yeah. And also, what were your favorite foods in what city? I guess.
When I was playing, you might think I'm nuts, but I didn't really eat food to enjoy it. I did it as it was part of my training. So I would I didn't like sauces. I still don't. I would just eat chicken breast with something that had a sauce, like a marinara sauce or something with no calories, vegetables, and just eat really super healthy. Now that I'm not an athlete anymore, there's so many good restaurants and so many good places. Vegas now has amazing restaurants, New York, LA, but Vegas is becoming one of the state-of-the-art places for entertainment and for cuisine. So yeah, I always appreciate a good steak. I eat out quite a bit. Like I said, I hang with Dana White, and we eat out a lot. And so yeah, we've gone to every restaurant in town, every restaurant around the world that he's gone, I've gone. So yeah, it's been, I enjoy food, but I also have to put limits on what I eat and how I work out, because I still really take care of my body.
I'd weigh 450 pounds if I lived in Vegas year round. Let me tell you, Jesus, God. Actually, Kenny Gifford talks about something I was going to ask you about, which is the game today compared to the game you knew. Do you think the game is on a downswing with the way they look at it? All we talk about is exit velocity and launch angles and home run. And it's three true outcomes, right? We all know that's what kind of turns a lot of baseball people on: home runs, strikeouts, and walks. Do you like the game today, Marty, or are you a fan at all?
I appreciate everything, to be honest, and I appreciate the game today. Does it have some different nuances than when I played? Absolutely, but everything changes. That's one thing
Yeah.
that certain things will change. So exit velocity now is just a term that people that want to be recognized as gurus will say, oh, the exit velocity, this or that, or these cybermetric guys or whatever you want to call them. We just called it hitting the ball hard. The harder you hit the ball, the more hits you get. It was simpler then. Now they just want to try to fancy up things that you can bring more to the table than just to say we hit the ball hard. Now it's exit velocity. What does that even mean? How do you increase the exit velocity? Hit the ball harder and it'll go farther. It's that simple. So they kind of overcomplicate things a little bit. You got guys trying to find shortcuts to the big leagues, and these hitting instructors and pitching instructors that are doing all these weird drills that try to think that somehow a guy that throws 37 miles an hour is going to throw 100, and he's going to make a kid that's weak and small all of a sudden become Nolan Ryan. And it's almost more of a way to make money and a way to promote themselves than it is to actually, it's not going to make great players. The talent and then the hard work and the basics. It's like anything, but you build your house on sand, it's going to be, you need a structure. You need to build it on a foundation. So to me, the basics are the basics. The swings are all, Cal Ripken's a classic example. He's had 70 million different stances, but when you hit, you always end up in the same spot, and you always have that right timing. And if you don't, you're not going to hit the ball. I know now they emphasize more on home runs, and strikeouts still doesn't matter. When I played, I think the league average was 235 last year, something ridiculous like that.
That was about it, yeah.
When I played, if you hit 250, it was embarrassing. When you walk up to the plate and see 250 on the scoreboard, you're like, oh my God. It was embarrassing. And striking out 100 times was embarrassing. And looking back on it, if I said I could have a 3-1 swing 0-2 and didn't care if I struck out, well, guys make mistakes 0-2 as well too. And instead of me just chopping it to shortstop to try to put it in play or popping it up or maybe getting a base hit, now I could crush a double or a homer because I'm looking to just launch every time I'm up. Would I hit 30 home runs? Probably. I'm not saying that in any kind of braggadocious way. I'm just saying, yeah, if I just could swing for the fences every time and nobody cared if I hit 220, and if I struck out 273 times, they didn't care, different game. But to me, what Tom Kelly preached so much is that's great. But when you have a runner on third and 1 out and the game on the line, you don't want a guy that's striking out 275 times up there because he's an out. And they're going to bring in their best pitcher that strikes out a lot of guys that are good hitters. So to me, there's got to be balance, like in everything in life. You can't just swing for the fences every time and not take into account that doesn't matter, because they're just doing numbers. Like, well, if your on-base percentage, your slugging is this, and they're putting a mathematical equation together, that's great. But you also got to have guys that are willing to know how to get runners over, get runners in, play the small game right, and to play the basics. So to me, the game's changed a little bit. But I think one thing super important is the average age of the fan was getting older and older and older. And I know very well now, being in the social media business and being around, like I said, Dana White, now there's a slap that's came out. It's kids now want quick gratification. It has to happen in seconds. It used to be 30 seconds. Now it's like 5 seconds and they lose their attention. So I think baseball realized that we got to make changes. We have to speed the game up. We have to make it more exciting. We have to do something to capture the young audience. And I understand it, because if you keep playing things the way they are and your audience is getting older and older and they start to die, pretty soon the sport dies. So I totally understand it. That's my take on it.
I get you. I'm that old guy, though, that's getting his game taken away from him. But that is, I don't want to be that old guy yelling at the guy to get off my kids to get off my lawn. I'm pretty bad at that sometimes. So let me leave you with this. Chris puts this up here, and I agree. A very caring and creative man, Marty Cordova. He wants to know what you're reading and listening to these days. I agree with his comment here, by the way. And real quick, what are you reading and listening to these days for him?
Yeah, so go ahead. Sorry, finish.
So you're good. Answer. You can answer.
I read and listen to books a lot. I mean, a lot. That's all I'm doing when I'm working out, driving, or whatever. I'm listening to audiobooks. There's one called Arete right now that I'm listening to. The author's name is Brian Johnson. It's an amazing book. I've listened. I listen to a lot of spiritual books, Conversations with God, The Power of Now, Living in the Moment. All these things are super important to me because I didn't do them in the past, and life just went by and didn't enjoy the moment. So now I'm learning that the moment is all that you have, and that I'm being very present in what I do. And time slowed down, things are happening in the right way. So yeah, I'm reading a lot of Many Lives, Many Masters. There's an infinite amount of books I've been reading. oh God, the one, The Untethered Soul is an amazing book by Michael Singer, unbelievable book. Many of these books, and I'm not giving justice to all of them. There's so many that I've read, but it's just like building. And that's one thing I would say to anybody. And it's part of that book, Arate, is just to grow a little bit every day. And you got to be in it for the long game. It's not, there's no quick fixes in it. And it's like one great example, and I'll end on this, is the stone cutter. If he hits a rock 100 times, on that 101st time, the huge stone splits in half. Well, it didn't happen overnight. And if you saw the 100th first swing, you'd say, man, he's either really good or that rock's very weak. But no, he chipped away and chipped away and chipped away, and there was no sign of results. All of a sudden it happened. So I really feel that's how my life is now. I may not notice results all the time, but then I'm feeling over time, wow, there's been a big shift.
Well, Marty, I'll tell you what, I love your philosophy. I enjoyed your career, and I'm happy with what you're doing now, trying to give back. And I've enjoyed the moment we've had here. I've lived in this moment and liked it. And I too kind of believe, and you haven't said exactly this way, but I think everybody's where they're supposed to be at any given moment in time. I think we're all there. And I'm glad I was in this moment with you. So thanks for coming in. It's been a great hour. We could have talked for another hour. I had a lot of stuff I didn't even get to, but that's the way it always is. So thank you so much for coming in. And we wish you well in your future endeavors and help you out any way you can as far as promotion or whatever it might be.
Thanks, Keith. Take care, buddy.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today with my guest, Marty Cordova. We'll be back next week with a see you later, Marty. I was going to say a little something to Marty, but I'll say goodbye. He's the man of mystery. We'll be off next week because I'm having some oral surgery. We'll be back on Friday, the 26th, with Tim Worley, former Georgia Bulldog and Pittsburgh Steeler. We'll be on Sunday with the Stream of Consciousness. You guys have a great day. Awesome hour. Thanks for having us with us. Marty is definitely a class act. And you guys, we'll see you Sunday. Have a great afternoon.